So this is a Hyundai Ioniq Electric, and on this video I'm going to talk about regenerative braking in electric vehicles. So regen braking has actually got nothing to do with the brakes. The brakes in an electric vehicle are exactly the same as a combustion engine vehicle. And the only difference is you've got an electric vacuum pump down there, because obviously you don't have an engine and a vacuum system with an electric motor. Sorry for interrupting, but I thought I'll just explain a couple of features on YouTube which will help you when watching long videos. Firstly, under settings you can adjust the playback speed, and secondly at the bottom of the screen you've got chapters where you can jump to relevant sections of the video. And while I've got you, please remember to add your comments or questions below the video, and also subscribe. Okie doke, enjoy the video. So regen braking is just engine braking, but obviously it's not an engine, it's an electric motor. So in an EV, when you lift off the accelerator, the vehicle starts slowing down and you get that engine braking effect, just like you do on a combustion engine vehicle, but it's much stronger than an EV. It slows down significantly faster. So when the vehicle is slowing down, that electric motor at the front is basically still being spun because it's connected to your wheels. So instantly that motor turns into a dynamo and starts putting electricity back into the battery pack. And obviously that extends your range, but crucially it's not wearing down your brake pads and your brake discs. And this is an area that often gets ignored with EVs. Actually the opposite gets reported. There's plenty of press articles to say that EVs produce more emissions because they wear the brakes quicker because they're heavier, which is a complete load of rubbish. Because of that regen braking, you hardly use the brakes, and in many cases, particularly if the vehicle's got strong regen, those brake pads and brake disc will probably last the lifetime of the vehicle. I've had vehicles with 130, 140,000 miles or more, and the front brake pads are still original, and they're actually only worn about 20%, and of course the brake discs are still original. So what you'll probably find is brake pads will last 200 or 300,000 miles on the front, and on the back probably the lifetime of the vehicle. However, on an EV the reality is you probably will change your pads at some point purely because of lack of use, and it's the rust that kills them before the brake material actually wears out. And you tend to find the backing pads rust and swell, and then they get stiff in the calipers. So they'll probably get replaced at, let's say, 150,000 miles typically, purely because of rust rather than wear. So with an EV, when you slow down, you're capturing that kinetic energy of the vehicle going forward via the electric motor, which is then putting it back into the battery pack. Whereas with a combustion engine vehicle, you're converting that kinetic energy into friction and heat. And as those brake pads compress against the brake disc, you're creating the brake dust, which is obviously going into the environment and into the waterways and in the air, which isn't good for us. Plus it's making your alloy wheels black, and obviously it's costing you money in wear and tear. So let's show you how that works in practice. I'll just start the car up here. So I'm in a 2020 Hyundai Ioniq with a 38 kilowatt hour battery here. And the Hyundais, and actually all the Kias as well, have particularly good regen. They've got really strong regen, and that's something that when you're used to EVs you really like. All EV drivers favour strong regen. On the Hyundai and Kias you have flappy paddles here on the back of the steering wheel, and that allows you to adjust the level of regen. And you've got 4 levels. You've got 1, 2 and 3, and you've also got a level 0. And level 0 turns it off completely and allows you to coast, and that's handy when you're doing higher speed driving on motorways, for example. But it's also handy when you're driving along and there's a little bit of a gradient. If you can see a gradient coming up, you can turn off the regen completely and coast and freewheel down it, and that's actually more efficient driving than having the regen on. However, what I tend to do is leave it on the strongest regen level, which is level 3, and then just do all of that adjustment on the accelerator pedal, and you have a power meter here. And when the bars are up in the white, that's showing you when you're using energy, and when it drops down into the blue area, the charge area, that shows you when it's the regen braking's on and you're capturing that energy. And you can adjust that just by very small adjustments with the accelerator pedal. So if you see that gradient and you're starting to go down, you just lift off the accelerator a little bit, and I can get it so it's dead on the 0 mark here without turning it off. But a lot of drivers, they tend to lift all the way off the accelerator, and if your car's got strong regen, it will slow down very quickly. Actually, on that subject, I saw a post the other day on one of the Facebook groups from a Tesla Model 3 driver, and he said, how do you adjust the regen on his Tesla, because his passengers were getting car sick when he was driving because it slowed down too quickly. And I tend to find this quite a bit. New EV drivers, they just lift their foot off the accelerator, and of course the car slows down far too fast. What you got to do is just gently lift your foot off, and often I don't take my foot off the accelerator at all. You're just lifting it up and down very gently to adjust your speed and your braking. So in the Hyundai here, as well as the power meter on the dash, we can also press the EV button and then go to menu, and then energy information, and then energy consumption. And this is basically showing us the electrical consumption in the car. So as we're sat here effectively on tick over, if it was an ICE vehicle, we're sat here with everything ready to drive and running. We can see that the electronics is using roughly 0.3 of a kilowatt, and that's basically all the ECUs in the car. A modern car has sort of 30, 40, 50 ECUs, so they're all drawing power, and it's all the lights on the dash, the daytime running lights are on, so that's the electronics. The climate control is on. I've got the air conditioning on here. At the moment it's using 0 kilowatts, but that switches on and off. So just a second ago I noticed that was, there we go, 0.31 of a kilowatt that's using at the moment, just to keep the temperature of the car the same outside. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bit colder. I'm going to make it 21 degrees, which matches the outside temperature. So as you can see, that's now using more energy as it's getting the car a few degrees colder, but still a very small amount of energy. And then the one we're going to look at is driving. So this is the amount of energy the electric motor is drawing, obviously when it's turning the front wheels and we're driving along. But crucially, when I lift off and we're using that regenerative braking effect, where the motor is putting energy back in the battery, this will also show it here as a negative figure. So it shows us how much energy we're getting back while we're slowing down. So there is another display up here on the dash that you get on the 38 kilowatt hour Ioniq, which I will show you here on my phone, and that is this display here, and that's showing you how much energy you're capturing back and putting back in your battery. But rather than showing you in kilowatts, which this is doing and the main display is doing, it's showing you in miles. So the display goes from 0 to half a mile. And the reality is, most of the time you're slowing down, for every sort of corner or junction, you're putting about a quarter of a mile up to half a mile. It would be useful actually if this display went up to a mile or a mile and a half, because quite frequently, particularly if you're driving at speed, you will capture half a mile of range back within a second or two. So it would have been more useful if that display was much larger. But anyway, it's quite a nice little thing, but no other EV seems to have that, maybe apart from some other Hyundai and Kia models, but other OEMs aren't sort of bothering with that. It is a bit of a pointless thing really. Most of the time you just want a power meter which shows you power being used and power being captured. So what I'll do now is go for a drive, and I'm not sure whether you can see all of this screen from back there, but I will tell you what it's displaying as we're going along. So I'm just going to drive normally, but we're on a bit of a windy country road here. So at the moment I'm accelerating and we're going uphill, so I'm using about 5 bars on the power meter, and that's equating to 23 kilowatt, but I've got to my sort of 35, actually we're going into 30 here, so let's slow down to 30 miles an hour exactly, and we're using 5 kilowatt going up this hill again, but there was a little bit of regen there, so we actually put a little bit back. So what we'll do, again, I've just lifted off a fraction, we're putting 10 kilowatt back into the battery, but obviously that's only for half a second or so, so you're not really capturing an awful lot there because it's just short little bursts. But the faster you're going and the longer you're slowing down, that's when you're putting a useful amount of energy back in the battery, and that's what that other gauge is for, and it will show you in miles how many miles you're putting back. So when I get out of the village here and I can increase my speed a little bit, it will make a little bit more sense. However, on an electric vehicle, the idea is you don't touch the brakes, and the reality is you don't really need to. The brakes are there just for emergencies, if you've got to do an emergency stop, and also to hold the brakes when you come up to a stop, to stop the car rolling back, and also that just that last little bit you would touch the brakes because the vehicle's then creeping forward. But at that point there's no wear on the pads because there's no speed left. You captured all that speed using the regenerative braking effect, i.e. the motor braking. So we're doing 36 miles an hour here, but I'm only using between 1 and 4 kilowatt, and actually now we're getting 6 kilowatt back because again I'm going down a little bit of a gradient. So as you can see, it doesn't take much. The slightest gradient, even at lower speeds, you're capturing energy back. So I'm sort of driving with only 1 bar on the power meter most of the time. But I am driving slow here, of course, because we're still in a 30-mile-an-hour limit, which I'm braking by 1 mile an hour. Right, so we're coming out of the speed limit here, so I'm going to accelerate up to 40. But already I'm lifting off to go into this corner, and we're getting 18 kilowatts back. As I come out the corner, I'm accelerating back up to 40 again, and I'm using 31 kilowatts on acceleration. I've got to the sort of speed that I can drive on this road, which is 45, and I'm back down to 1 or 2 kilowatts of energy being used. So obviously you use more power to accelerate. When you get to your speed, you can lift off slightly, it still maintains that speed, and you end up driving very efficiently. So again, coming into a corner, I'm lifting off because I need to reduce the speed a little bit, getting some charge back, and I haven't touched the brakes. And I haven't actually lifted my foot off the accelerator, I'm just lifting it up and down very slightly. And it's something you get used to very quickly when you're driving electric vehicles. It's really nice because as soon as you lift off slightly, the vehicle is slowing down, so you feel in control. You don't feel like it's running away with you like it would do on an automatic combustion engine vehicle. So far I haven't really seen any noticeable mileage on that other little gauge there, which shows you the energy you've captured in miles. It hasn't moved off the naught at all because it's always been very short little bursts. However, I'm about to come down a much longer hill. This is Streatley Hill near Goring and Streatley, if anyone knows it. Here we are, I'm just coming into Streatley now, so we're just driving through Streatley golf course, and there's some golfers just crossing the road. There we go. And now we've got a long hill, so I've lifted off slightly and I've got 2 bars of regen, so I'm regenning at 6 kilowatt, 9 kilowatt, but I'm still doing 30 miles an hour. But because we're going downhill, still doing 30, but I'm getting 22 kilowatt charging, 25 kilowatt charging. I'm now doing 40 miles an hour and I'm getting 32 kilowatt charging. So we're driving down the hill on the motor, but the motor is being spun because of our kinetic energy going forward, and I'm charging at 47 kilowatts there, and I'm still doing 38 miles an hour. So 25 kilowatt, we're doing 41 miles an hour, we're charging at 36 kilowatt. So it's holding the speed back, we're not racing down the hill. Well, actually we've got traffic lights here now, so I'm lifting off a little bit more, but I still haven't taken my foot properly off the accelerator, and we're still charging at 20 kilowatt. We're doing 25, 20 miles an hour. I'm coming to a stop, and I still haven't taken my foot off the accelerator. Now I have. I've just lifted my foot off the accelerator, and now I've just touched the brakes. So that's the only braking I did, just that last meter, just to stop the car rolling away. So even though I've touched the brakes, there is no wear on the brake pads because there is no speed there to lose. So I can hold it here on the brakes. Actually, I'm going to put auto hold on so it holds the brakes for me. So as you can see, when you're coming down a hill like that, it was quite a long hill of, I don't know, what was that, quarter of a mile or so, maybe a bit less. But it was showing I had over half a mile of range added. But that went up very quickly. So I'll look back at the video when I'm editing it and put it up on the screen to measure how long it took me and what the average charge time was, and put it up in kilowatt hours and how many miles that would have added to the battery. It's a little bit irrelevant really, because for every hill you come down you've got to drive up, whether that's the same hill or gradually over many smaller ones, and you're going to use more energy going up a hill than you ever are going to capture coming down it. But obviously it's far better for the environment and also for your wallet, but also for the running costs of the car, to do all that slowing down on the motor and put it back in your battery than to go down that hill holding your friction brakes. So what I've got to do now is find somewhere to turn around, and I'm going to drive back up Streatley Hill and come down it a bit faster and have a look at what the maximum charging rate is on the Hyundai Ioniq. But I've just got to find somewhere to turn around. And actually going over the river here, this is the River Thames, we're now going into Goring, and actually that's George Michael's riverside cottage just there where he died. And it's become a bit of a tourist spot. It's a bit of a shame for the people that now live in there, but that's where we are. This is Goring, or Goring on Thames as the full name is. So let's just see if I can spin around here, and I'll go back up the hill and come down with a bit of speed and see if we can see what the maximum charge rate is from the electric motor. So I'm now going back up Streatley Hill, and the gradient of hills never shows up on cameras. So this hill, when I was much younger, when I was sort of first driving, I was born in '69, so when I was driving, my first car was a 1973 Mini with an 850cc engine. But in my early 20s, I was driving sort of late 70s, early 80s cars with sort of 1.3 engines. And you had to come up this hill in second gear. That's how steep it was. And sometimes, particularly this last little bit up here, sometimes in some vehicles, if you had a heavy load in the back, occasionally I was driving vans with a big load, I had to get it into first gear sometimes. It's that steep, but of course none of this ever shows up on the camera. Driving up here in this car, I'm drawing 46 kilowatt. This is a little steep bit, this last little bit. But modern cars fly up this hill because obviously modern cars are more powerful. Combustion engine cars, should I say. EVs, not an issue at all. They fly up hills faster than easier than a combustion engine vehicle. It's strange, there's this sort of one of these myths that go around that EVs are useless up hills, but of course they're not. EVs are much more powerful than a combustion engine vehicles, and you've got more torque with an electric motor. But I think that comes from some of the very first EVs we saw in this country were conversions of Peugeot Partners and Peugeot Boxer vans, not Boxers, Peugeot Dispatch vans, and there were some Ford vans converted by Azure, and the Allied company did the Peugeot ones, and because they were combustion engine vehicles converted to an electric when they were new, they sort of fixed the transmission, because with an EV you don't need a gearbox, so they were sort of fixing a manual gearbox to a single speed, and I think they in some cases got the gear ratios wrong, because I know on some of them they sort of fixed it in a second gear and some of them they fixed it in a third gear, and the gearing ratio was wrong. So on hills those vehicles were pretty awful. you had to sort of floor it to get enough power out of it to get up some of the hills. But that had all gone by the time the manufacturers were making electric vehicles. They had much better gear ratios in their single speed gearboxes, and it's not a problem on any EV. Obviously you've got to put your foot down a little bit more, exactly the same as you would in a combustion engine vehicle, because you do need more power going up a hill. But EVs generally, they have more power than their combustion engine counterparts. But if you want to know more about how an electric vehicle gearbox works, the reduction gearbox, I've done a video on that on the channel. If it's not out yet, it will be out shortly, and you'll see a link to it at the top of the screen and in the video description below. So they're out combining today, even though it was raining this morning. Obviously let's just turn the vents off as we go through the dust from the combine there. But obviously that grain is, well, that corn has dried quick enough that they're out. Oh dear, even though the vents are turned off, I still could feel that in my throat, so quite a bit came in the car. Anyway, let's turn them back on. So, going to go down Streatley Hill again now, but I'm going to go at some speed. Obviously not now, because there might be golfers crossing the road here. But I'm going to enter it at more speed, lift off the accelerator so I can see the maximum amount of power the electric motor can make on full regen. So I'm doing 40 miles an hour and I'll lift off 53 kilowatt. Let me just get some speed up again. I'm doing 53, lift off 70 kilowatt, 68. That's the highest I've seen. Oh, I've got to touch the brakes. Right, so I've got full regen, not quite full regen now. Yeah, 70 kilowatt. That's the highest I've ever seen. I thought it maxed out at 60. So to put that in some context, when you charge an electric vehicle off a normal 3-pin plug using a portable charger or a granny cable, you're charging at 2.3 kilowatt because you're limited to 10 amp. If you're charging your EV through a wall charger at home, you're charging at 7.3 kilowatt, which is 32 amp. So here we've got a peak charge from that electric motor of 70 kilowatt. If you're DC rapid charging on these, it's pretty slow on these actually. I can't remember, oh come on, I can't remember exactly what it is. It is about 44 kilowatt, but peak, I think it peaks at about 57, something like that. So obviously the electric motor has a higher peak output than the charging system on this car. Whether the battery can absorb 70 kilowatt, I don't know. I guess it can, but of course you're only doing this in little bursts when you're slowing down, unless you're going down a ridiculously long hill that's very steep. But obviously this regen back very much depends on the electric motor and the size of that motor. But on these, the point of the video really was just to look at the maximum output of that motor in kilowatts, and it seems it's 70 kilowatt. So I think that's about all I can talk to you about regen. The point of this video is I just wanted to see what the maximum was on this car, a Hyundai Ioniq 38. So I think I'll wrap it up as I drive back now. So if you found this video useful, as always, please do click the thumbs up button on YouTube. That really does help. Do subscribe if you want to know more about electric vehicles. I'm posting videos twice a week, every Monday evening and every Sunday morning, with maybe the odd 1 or 2 video shorts in between that. So there's over 650 videos on the channel already, and obviously more coming every single week. Okie doke, I'll see you on the next one.